Yes, you read the title correctly. In this video, I'm going to be explaining how you can read one book per day in order to change your life. Now, before I get into how you can read one book per day, you need to understand how the subconscious mind works. Okay, understand that the subconscious mind is the storage facility for all of our memories. It is also the place that we typically go to in order to induce certain actions. So for example, if you're driving to your place of work that you've been to hundreds of times, you're not consciously thinking about every turn that you need to take. A lot of times you get in the car and suddenly you're at work. And maybe you have a few things that capture your attention along the way, but ultimately you're on autopilot for the majority of the time. The reason why you're on autopilot is because of your subconscious mind and the way that it maintains the memories of that trip to your job place. Now, here's something about the subconscious mind that a lot of people are not aware of. The subconscious mind is highly susceptible to programming. I'm going to give you an example. Okay, going back to the commute analogy, billboards. You're not supposed to read billboards when you're going 70 or 80 miles per hour down the interstate. And yet, advertisers are still willing to spend hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars in order to advertise their products or services on these billboards on the side of freeways. And why are they willing to spend that much money? They're willing to spend that much money not because you're going to read the billboards consciously, but because subconsciously you're going to consume the information on those billboards, and that repetitive exposure over time will influence your line of thinking, which will in turn influence your actions. So, for example, if you're constantly seeing McDonald's billboards every single day and you don't have any conscious dietary restrictions that prevent you from eating at McDonald's, at some point or another, you're going to eat at McDonald's. Now, you can't necessarily quantify which time was the time that influenced you to take that action, but what you can reasonably assume is that the accumulation of all of that exposure is what led to you making that decision. Because the subconscious mind controls the majority of your actions, even when you think that the conscious mind controls the majority of your actions. Now that you understand a little bit about your subconscious mind, you need to understand how reading works. In the same way that billboards are designed to be subconsciously consumed as opposed to consciously consumed, reading and books are designed to be subconsciously consumed as well. And this goes for really all forms of media: music, TV shows, movies, everything in between, but this video is about books. Okay, books are meant to be consumed and stored subconsciously. You would be absolutely delusional to think that you can remember every single word out of a 300-page book. And that's not the point of reading books. Okay, the point is to understand the concept. Now, with that being said, the primary purpose of books is to acquire knowledge. Okay, learning is comprised of two primary factors. There's the acquisition of knowledge and the application of knowledge. Books in particular are designed to feed into the acquisition of knowledge. And the acquisition of knowledge is a subconscious principle which leads to the application of knowledge over time. This is something that I realized very recently as I began to reread a lot of books which on my first read didn't necessarily make sense to me at a deeper level. I might have understood them conceptually, but I didn't understand them at the level that I needed to understand them to actively apply them. And yet, just by exposing myself to that information, just by acquiring that information, I was able to passively apply a lot of the teachings without even realizing it. And I didn't realize it until I went back and reread the books. In other words, the most effective way to read a book is to acquire the information and then allow your subconscious mind to influence you to passively apply it. That is how you learn and get the most out of books. Now, how do you go about reading one book per day? The answer is simple. You read while you sleep. You read while you sleep. Okay, sleep is the best time to program your subconscious mind. And the reason why is because when you sleep, you dream. And what are dreams? Dreams are projections of your subconscious mind. If you were to keep a dream journal every single day for the next month, you would start to identify patterns. And a lot of these patterns can be traced back to your day-to-day life. You might have seen somebody with a very intriguing face, and they presented themselves again in your dream, perhaps in a distorted way or perhaps in a completely different context, but you still saw them nonetheless, even though you may not consciously remember them. But by paying attention to your dreams, you can learn to be more cognizant of these coincidences or these strange patterns that occur in your dreams, because ultimately they're not strange and they're not unrelated. They all tie back to the subconscious mind. And the reason why is because when you are asleep, or when you're falling asleep especially, your brain changes the frequency of the waves that it produces. And in particular, your brain produces alpha waves, theta waves, and delta waves. Alpha waves are produced when you're in a meditative state, i.e. when you first lay down in bed and close your eyes. Theta waves are produced when you're in a state between being awake and being asleep. Okay, so when you're first starting to fall asleep, or even when you're in a light sleep. And delta waves are produced when you're in a deep sleep, a deep but dreamless sleep. So once you learn to be aware and cognizant of these different wave patterns, these waveforms, these frequencies that your brain is operating on in these different stages of sleep, you can optimize this knowledge in order to feed your subconscious mind certain information at specific times of the day. Okay, and like I said, the best time to do this is while you're asleep or while you're falling asleep. Now, how do you go about reading while you sleep? Okay, the answer is simple. Audible books. Like I said earlier, the primary principle in acquiring information from books is being exposed to the information in the pages. That doesn't mean that you have to understand it at the core level. It simply means that you need to acquire the information and store it in your subconscious mind. And then your subconscious mind will combine that information with any other information that you have in order to place that new information into context. And once you're able to place that new information into context, then you can start taking actions to reinforce this new information or to get a better understanding, to get more insight of this new information. But of course, the majority of us, myself included, do not have time to go through an entire book per day by simply reading it. Okay, but that's where Audible books come into play. Audible books enable you to listen to the books while you sleep. In other words, you can acquire the information while you're in the alpha, theta, and delta states of mind. And this is what enables you to acquire this information in a much more efficient manner. Because for one, you don't have to spend extra time, you don't have to allocate extra time to reading during your day. You can read while you're asleep by just simply listening to the audiobooks. But at the same time, you're able to apply the information much more effectively, such that you don't have to continue going back and relearning concepts over and over and over again, because once you acquire the information, life will become the primary factor that allows you to gather new insight on this newly found information. Like I said earlier, the subconscious mind works best through exposure, by repetitive exposure, especially in these vulnerable states. Now, obviously, you need to be very, very selective of the information that you feed yourself during this time, because if you feed yourself with negative information, that's going to show. It's going to show in your thought patterns, in the actions that you take, and in your belief systems. But if you consciously feed yourself positive information directly to your subconscious mind by listening to audiobooks while you sleep, and you're in the alpha, theta, and delta state of mind, that's where you'll be able to acquire new information every single day. Because you can get through an entire audiobook in a full night's rest, 8 hours. So as you pass through the different stages of sleep, what you'll probably find, aside from the fact that you're acquiring this information at the subconscious level, is that the teachings that you gather from these audiobooks will present themselves in your dreams over time. And that's how you know that it's working. Okay, when the teachings begin to interfere with your dreams, because that means that they're being projected from your subconscious mind through your dream state.